And good evening and welcome to the May 10th meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those in the audience with us, and we're glad to have those of you that are watching from home. At this time, we'd like to stand, please, as Mr. Phil King will lead us in our pledge, followed then by our moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now our moment of silence. Thank you. All right, you have an agenda in front of you. I ask for a motion, please, to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. All right. Communications, Dr. Gilbert.
Thank you very much. This month we celebrated with our breakfast, our BEP breakfast, which is in partnership with the Chamber. It's the Business Education Partnership. We had several grant award winners, so I want to announce those tonight. Debbie Hickerson, Case Lane Academy, had 2 grants. The first was Here We Grow Again, and the second is State of Create. Then Craig Neelius, Tammy Neely, and Diana Kellum from John Pittard Elementary had a grant entitled Landmark Perspectives. David Lockett and Scott Campbell had a couple of grants. David Lockett is at Mitchell Nelson Elementary, and Scott Campbell is their technology supervisor. One of the grants was Lego More to Math, and the other was Programming and Making of Arduino. Don't ask, I just read it. Okay, Shannon Minner from Reeves Rogers Elementary has received a grant called A Little Bit of Circuits. Daniel Temple from Reeves Rogers received a grant, Writing Without Frustration. Jessica Jacobs from Scales received a grant, Empowering Through Engineering. And Jay Priestley and Melanie Loop from Scales received a grant called Math Madness. So we certainly appreciate our teachers and our supervisors writing those grants. Murfreesboro was very well represented at the breakfast the other morning. We want to congratulate our gifted coordinator, Stacy Burt, for her acceptance on the Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment Program Science Item Review Committee for grades 6 through 8. Also, she has been invited by Scholastic, 9 Story Media, and Netflix to serve as one of 3 educational consultants for the relaunch of the animated children's series for animated television series for children based on the book The Magic School Bus, and she is consulting on the development of 26 episodes that will be distributed by Netflix in 2017. So congratulations, Stacy. Also, congratulations to our Read to Be Spelling Bee runner-up, Lainey Denton. She is from Overall Creek Elementary. She received a medal along with a $75 cash award from Franklin Synergy Bank, and her teacher received a gift certificate from the Learning Circle. Recently, the work of Murfreesboro City was cited by the White House in the fact sheet entitled Advancing Active STEM Education for Our Youngest Learners. Murfreesboro's partnerships with the community organizations, efforts to provide professional development opportunities for teachers, and plans to expand access to STEM experiences for children were noted. So our thanks to Rebecca Few, Cherry Ross, and Leah Barch for submitting the information to the White House. Discovery School will be holding their 10th anniversary celebration on Tuesday, May the 17th from 5:30 until 7 in the school gymnasium. And Lineball Library will be hosting a reception on Thursday, May 19th at 6 o'clock for approximately 100 of our ESP students who are now published authors. Certified teachers and ESP staff have been using a writing curriculum called Right Brain Books that has resulted in a published book for each of the students. And then finally, we are proud to host again this year the International Folk Fest Dancers. We'll be hosting them from Puerto Rico on June the 15th, at 9:30 at Patterson Park. So thanks to our community outreach team and also the International Folk Fest for working together again to bring dancers to our children. And those are your communication items.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. A lot of people make this system go.
Absolutely.
Our consent items, you have minutes from the April 19th and the 26th meeting. Also, you have policies for a second reading.
I move that we accept these consent items.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Grenier to have a second.
Second.
Have any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. All right. Action item.
Your first action item is approval of applications in the budget for the fiscal year 2017 federal projects. These are primarily your title funds and also your ESP federal grants that come down through the state. Your Title I funds are funds that are generated by schools that have a greater than 40% free or reduced lunch in their schools, and also it's based on a spiral. So basically what happens is the amount of money that we receive from the federal government is divided into our schools that are our Title I schools based on the highest amount of free and reduced lunch is going to get the most money. Title funds, really the decision of how to use those funds rests with the schools, not with the district, and so you do have each individual school deciding its needs. That's why in your title funding you will find some funds that have been used for additional personnel. You will find some that have been used for equipment, some that have been used for professional development. So that explains in your budget why you have some additional academic interventionists, you may have some additional educational assistants or an academic coach as a result of the schools using their Title I funds. Some schools have additional technology or instructional materials, additional professional development of using those funds also. So your Title I funds really are for your materials, also for some professional development, for additional personnel, whatever the school needs that would qualify for use of those funds. And that is decided on a school-by-school basis. Excuse me. Title II funds are allocated for professional development. These funds can be used district-wide. In our particular district, we use them for our technology coaches primarily. Title III funds are used for ESL student services. So I will be happy to answer any questions you have about those funds, but you do have them in your packet. You also have information or the amount that is from the Spotlight and also from the LEAPS grant. These were originally 21st century programs. They still are 21st century programs, but also lottery funding that are provided for our after-school programs. And then finally, you have your IDEA funds in there, and those, of course, are used for your special needs students. So that is how those funds are used. And we do need a motion, and the board does need to accept the application.
Do I have a motion to accept the application?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion, questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what a 21st century program is.
Okay, your 21st century programs are your after-school programs. They originally were federal grants. The first 21st century grant we received, we applied directly to the federal government. Now they are block grants that are sent down to the state and then school districts apply. So your 21st century are going to be your after-school programming. ESP is using that.
Any other questions? Ms. Renier?
How many of our schools qualify for title funds?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have all but 4.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion made and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much.
Your next action item is the differentiated pay plan. Each year we do have to have the board vote on how we are going to have a differentiated pay plan. This year we are asking you, as in past years, to use that pay plan. What it would look like is a $2,000 signing bonus for any new ESL teachers, and we had that last year. So the state requires that we have some sort of differentiated pay plan, and that is what our recommendation would be again this year.
Do you need a motion on this?
We will
Yes.
need a motion to accept this. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Lanier. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Any discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much.
Your third action item is approval of the revised board chair compensation, and I'm going to ask Ms. Baker to handle this one because it does require some changes with the city.
Okay, during the, the budget sessions, it was recommended that the board chair receive an additional $50 of compensation each month due to the extra work that the board chair puts in for the school district. So in order to do that, the compensation for the school board is set by city code. So there would have to be an amendment to the city code. And what I've presented to you tonight is a proposed amendment to the city code section 25-2 that would allow the board chair to receive an additional $50 in compensation each month. And this would, if the board wants to move forward with this change, I would have to take it to City Council for council approval since it is a revision to the city code. And it would have to go through 2 readings at the City Council. Do y'all have any questions?
We have a motion to approve. I am not going to vote on this.
I make a motion that we approve this.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Any questions, comments? All right, again, I am not voting on this issue
Okay.
because I am the current chair.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Thank you very much. Next item.
Okay, so now we're going to start going over some board policies and what I have provided to you, if you will look in the packet that starts with board policy 1.301. I gave you 2 packets tonight. One packet were the ones that were under the consent agenda, and the second packet is the ones up for consideration tonight.
We don't have these on.
No, you
Minutes
don't.
and agenda.
You
Okay.
don't. They
Well,
aren't. And I apologize for
okay.
I'm
not
glad
getting
these-
them out sooner, but sorry. And for y'all's convenience, if you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, I did bait stamp them and number the entire packet in order, so to help us move from document to document. The way that we'll go through these is I will start with, I'm going to reference the numbering system of the Tennessee School Board Association. And what I've provided to you on pretty much every one of them is a staff recommended version, the TSBA version, and the current policy that mirrors that particular topic. So first we have policy 1.301 regarding executive committee. The first document you have in front of you is the staff recommended version. And this version is a combination of the TSBA recommended policy and our current policy, which is found at Board Policy BO50, Executive Committee. And I have tracked in the changes to the TSBA recommended policy on the staff recommended version, so you will see where there were changes or additions to what TSBA sent us. First, the main difference in this one is the addition of the language in lines 16 through 19, that the executive committee may delegate to other school personnel the exercise of any powers and the discharge of any duties imparted upon the executive committee by the policies or by vote of the board. And that language is in our current policy. And that has been the practice of the executive committee. And as you are aware, the executive committee consists of the chair and the director, and this policy spells out what their duties are under state law.
Okay, let me ask a question. The first copy that we have says Executive Committee.
Right.
1.301, issued 3/25/14. Then the next page is the same thing except some typographical.
Well, look up at the top there in the header. The
Okay.
first one says, this is the staff recommended version, where I've combined the current policy and the TSBA policy.
Okay, all right.
And then the second one is TSBA's policy.
Got it. The third one is the current policy.
Right,
I
exactly.
think you said that, and I didn't look close enough. Okay. Do I have a motion to accept this on first reading? Get a motion and a second, and then we'll discuss. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Barrett. Now, any discussion, questions?
Need time to read it.
Okay.
Their version is almost verbatim.
Identical.
The third version.
Our,
Our current policy is almost
yeah.
completely identical, except for some things are capped and some are not. So,
And I tracked the changes to the TSBA policy so you would see where additions were made.
All right, so the motion then is to accept which policy?
The staff recommended.
The current, the staff, or CSBA?
Staff recommended policy.
Staff recommended policy. That's the motion. Am I correct?
correct.
Okay. And that is the second as well. Any other discussion? Those in favor of adopting the executive committee policy, the staff recommended version, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Okay, next, you have before you a policy regarding consultants. The first one is the staff recommended version, which again is a combination of our current policy, which is found at SS1, and the TSBA version, which is numbered 1.303. And I have tracked in the changes to the TSBA version. The main change in how we currently handle hiring consultants versus the TSBA policy is that currently the director of schools has primarily been assigned by the board that responsibility, and it comes to the board for their approval if the consulting contract exceeds $10,000 annually or a $3,000 short-term agreement of 1 month or less. And that is in our current policy, is when we bring consultants to the board for approval. Now, I don't know, Linda, if you want to give them some examples of
I
the
think-
type of consultants we hire.
I think a lot of times, especially when you're looking at primarily what I was thinking about, Kelly, is special ed. A lot of times we'll have consultants that come in, and if we came to you every time that happened, it would be almost impossible to get done what we need to get done in a timely manner. And so that's the reason. I think that the process has worked well, and really don't see any reason to change it when I look at the day-to-day operations of the district.
I move that we accept the staff recommended version of policy 1.303.
All right, thank you, Ms. Renier. And if I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Now, any discussion or questions? Ms. Smith?
I may not be reading this thoroughly enough. Is there a reporting of all consultant contracts required, even though it's less than 3,000? I mean, meets the less than $3,000 short-term agreement or the $10,000 long-term?
Typically, with any contract we have, it's going to go by Kelly. So
Okay.
any contract we have, before I sign it, is always run by Kelly. So
But I'm talking about to the board.
have we reported individual?
I
'Cause
think-
when you get into the speech and all of that, I don't know. It's in
I
the
believe
budget,
we
so I think go ahead.
The ones that are already allocated in the budget are not reported individually to the board, but if it is something outside of budget line items, that's reported to the board. Is that correct? Am I, okay.
So where is that in this writing?
That is right here where board approval shall be received prior to entering into the consulting contracts exceeding that amount.
What I'm asking about is
Yeah.
the ones that don't.
That fall under that
Under
amount.
that. Then those aren't reported to the board. Those would not come before the board, and those typically are the ones that are in the budget.
Right.
Well, I think I would like to see, I don't have to approve it, I would like to know about it, if it was outside of what we budgeted.
If it's outside of what we budgeted, I'll bring it to you. I mean, I have to.
Okay, even if it doesn't exceed the $10,000, or it doesn't in the short-term contract.
There will be, like, there would be an amount in the budget for speech pathology. So there would be an amount in the budget for outside contracted, in thinking about, like, transportation to Tennessee School for the Blind. Those things are in your budget already.
Okay, so the money's already allocated, so it
Right.
doesn't really matter, okay.
Right.
The contracts that are already in the budget do not have to be brought back for board approval because the money's already been
Of
approved.
course not. Now, I'm talking about if there were ones that were not already in the budget.
We have to approve.
They
it.
have to come to the board for approval, and that's more through the budgeting process and the procurement policies. That's where that comes into
Even if
play.
they don't exceed $10,000 and they're less
Right,
than $3,000.
because we'd have to make an adjustment to the budget if they're not already set up in the
Allocated.
budget.
Okay, great,
Would that
thank
not
you.
kind of fall under the budget? We just, not budget. Help me out. What's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Policy that we just went over. That if it's, we look over anything outside of the norm, it brings it to our attention. Any bids or purchasing agent. And in this case, this is a consultant,
These are consultants.
an individual. Okay.
Dr. Brown?
I think my question's been answered.
Okay. You need a motion?
Wait, it.
Already
have
got the
it.
motion?
Yeah, got it.
Thank you. I want to see if y'all are up to date like me.
Excuse me.
All in favor of the motion to adopt the staff recommended version, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much. Next policy.
Okay, the next policy is 1.400. You have the staff recommended version, and then the TSB recommended version, TSBA, I'm sorry, and then the current policy. They were substantially, they were similar, and TSBA recommended that we maintain our current policy, so the one they proposed us mimics ours. They did add a little bit of difference in the way that it was formatted was the main change. You'll see there's very little redlining, as you'll notice in this policy. None of the redlining is substantive. It's just the style that we write our policies in.
Do I have a motion to approve the staff recommended policy?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Barrett?
Two things. We had grandparents in there on our policy, and I didn't see it in the one that, for family emergency. So if we could add that.
All right, I'll add that back.
And
there.
then the five for
What
the
line is that?
What you're looking at,
grandparent, it's not under, we have everything else but
What
grandparent.
line is that, Jerry?
Line, sorry, 17, 15, 16, 17, page 9.
we're adding grandparents to that
Yeah.
as an emergency.
I'm still lucky enough to have 3 of them, so.
You have another suggestion?
Yeah, and I do have another question. Lines 11 and 12, under the work-related absence, it has 5 days. Is that state statute? It has to be 5 days?
Yes, that is out of the state.
Okay, so you
statute.
couldn't lower that?
No,
Okay.
that's
All right.
state statute.
Okay, I was just wondering. All right, thank you.
Where are you talking about the 5 days?
Right here, the next page.
That's for the to be able to meet
The
electronically.
electronic attendance.
Yeah, page 9.
Page 9.
How on earth do you know
Second
Bottom
page
right.
of this,
Down here.
family emergency?
Mean line 9?
No,
line 11.
You're on
Oh,
page 9.
page, okay, thanks,
It's a
sorry.
family emergency. How are you going to know 5 days in advance?
Well, no, this is work, and then this family. So it's two different, yeah, two different. It's okay.
We have a motion and a second to accept staff recommended policy
With the grandparent change?
with grandparents added as in regards to family emergency. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next, this one's going to be a little more difficult to discuss. This is, what you have first is our current policy, which is Board Policy B08. It deals with public participation in board meetings. TSBA provided us with 2 separate policies that were already covered by our policy B08. One dealt with public hearings, 1.401, and the other dealt with appeals to and appearances before the board, 1.404. And I know when our public participation policy was initially adopted or last reviewed by the board, there was a great amount of discussion, and I did not try to make any changes because I didn't know if the board just wanted to keep what they had. The 2 policies that TSBA recommends do not necessarily address at all the method that our board was handling public participation. They really are focusing more on situations where you have hearings before the board and are just not applicable necessarily to how our board was handling those things.
Ms. Renier?
Would it be, in your opinion, Ms. Baker, advantageous to have all 3 of them as separate policies? I mean, I'm sure we can go through RB08 and take something out that would land on either of these, but do you see the necessity to do all 3?
No, I see the need to keep your current policy, and the other policies are dealing with hearings, and each hearing that might come before the board, whether it's an employee discipline, a student discipline, any sort of appeal that's brought to the board, the statutes that allow that appeal to reach their way to the board have in them the procedure that should be followed. So trying to develop these generic policies for having hearings before the board, I found a little bit difficult, and it wouldn't necessarily be all-encompassing in each statute where someone would be able to appeal something to the board could potentially have different procedure involved.
And they had, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's allergies. They had nothing that, I'm wondering about the numbering because we were trying to be consistent with them. Would this then fit one of these numbers, 1.401 or 404?
That would be my suggestion, is that we rename it 1.401. That we
401?
rename B08 as 1.401.
So if we were to do that, that would not, or would that take place or include the one on public hearings and appeals before the board?
Yes, we just would not adopt the one specifically dealing with public hearings and the one dealing with appeals to and appearances before the board, because both of those subjects are addressed in our current BO8.
Okay.
Because our BO8 covers when the director or the board ask a citizen to present an item to the board, such as our auditors or someone of that nature that needs to, our architects or contractors that we have come to the board to present an item. Then the second, if there are topics of general interest and the board deems that those topics are significant enough to schedule a public hearing, then the board can choose to do that, such as what the board's done during zoning situations. Sometimes y'all have set up public hearings to give the public an opportunity to address that topic to the board. Then third, our policy deals with in accordance with other board policies or state or federal laws. That's the ones that are the teacher discipline hearings, the student discipline hearings. Those are addressed in other state statutes and other board policies as to what the proper procedure is to request a hearing and hold a hearing on those particular topics before the board. So we do touch on that, which is what is covered in the 1.404, the appeals and appearances before the board. And then fourth is the more what you would think of as the public participation, where an individual may request to the board chair or the director an opportunity to address the board on a certain topic. And then that item that starts out at line 15, it explains what that procedure is for that type of board presentation.
So I will go ahead and make a motion that we accept our BO8 as 1.401 and name it that way for TSBA. Is that how? I don't know if I'm doing that correctly.
So yours is to accept the current policy and rename it or
Renumber it. I guess, and also that means not using their policy 1.401 or 1.404.
All right, do I have a second?
I second that.
Ms. Smith, any other discussion?
Well, is the intent, if we keep BO8 as is, just rename it, that 1.404 and 1.401 will come along later as a separate?
No, I just said deleting these completely because they're covered in here, basically.
All right. All right, where, looking at 1.404 of TSBA, in lines 8 and 9, 8, 9, and 10, am I overlooking that in the current policy BO8? Similar?
I think it's...
Look, that would come into play with lines 15 and 16.
In BO8?
Yeah, that paragraph that starts at line 15.
Okay, it's just worded, it doesn't say it's specific. I guess what threw me off was in 1.404, well, it's written, but they're asking for an amount, a certain window of time, and ours didn't have that, I don't believe.
All right, you have a motion and a second to accept BO8, our current policy, and renumber it. No, not renumber it. Leave it at,
Yes.
renumber it as
1.401.
1.401. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Now, we've got some others to go, but I will remind you now that this is only first reading. And you still got to go through 2 more readings, so we'll give you
One more reading.
1 more reading, and that'll give you time to look at it more in depth if you wish. All right.
All right, the next one you have before you is the staff recommended policy is titled Notification of Meetings, and it's 1.402. It is a combination of the Tennessee School Board Association's recommended policy and our current policy, B06, regarding notification of meetings. I took the TSBA policy and tracked in the revisions based on our policy, some of the language in our policy that I thought was more appropriate for our school system.
May I ask a question?
Ms. Smith?
Is it not sufficient just to put it on the school system's website?
Is it not what?
The state law talks about advertising public meetings in a paper of local circulation, so that the state law still requires it to go into newspapers advertising regular and special meetings.
Which in our case would be the Daily News Journal and the Murfreesboro Post.
Either one. You can do one.
Either one?
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if that weren't updated at some point, but
All right, let's get a motion to approve if we would like to, and then we'll come back for other discussion.
Motion. Second.
All right, Dr. Brown, is this the staff recommended policy, Dr. Brown?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Barrett?
Yep.
Okay. Kelly, I know you said either one, but I would like somewhere to make sure that we get that notification to both local newspapers and local radio.
Well, it's advertisements that we have to pay for those legal notices. And we put out, we get quotes as to which of the 2 local papers that meet the state law requirement, and then we'll advertise them in the one that gives the best quote price.
Yes, ma'am?
We're also fortunate that the city, I work with Ms. Michoto, and she actually includes us now in all of the city's legal notices. So when she does an entire legal notice of meetings for the city and includes us in it. So it actually doesn't cost us anything unless I run an ad for a special meeting.
Do normally those notifications go to both local newspapers, or do you know?
Honestly, I do not know what.
I believe they're going to the Post now. I think they have the bid for running city legal notices.
And the Journal, I think I saw it in the Journal about tonight's meeting. I may not have, but I thought I did. Okay. All right, so right now we know we're going to one printed media in the city. Well, I still think it needs to go to both, but that's just my personal opinion. All right, you have a motion and a second to accept the staff recommended policy on notification of meetings. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Okay, next you have board policy. It is numbered 1.403. It's regarding agendas. Our current policy is B07. TSBA recommended that we, the version they sent us, they recommended that we continue to utilize our current policy, B07. So there's only one change you'll notice I had to make to TSBA's recommended policy, and that is, I was anticipating that you would adopt 1.404, and the title would be Public Participation in Board Meetings, as opposed to Appeals and Appearances. See line 22 and 23? That's the only change from our current policy or what TSBA recommended to us.
Well, wouldn't that,
Mr. Barrett?
wouldn't that be 1.401 now?
I'm sorry.
Instead of,
Thank you.
because that, yeah, that's the one we, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept which policy?
I got a motion to approve 1.403, recommended by staff.
The staff recommended?
Yes.
All right. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
The next one that was listed on your agenda is 1.404, and that one we discussed earlier, so the board was not going to adopt that. They were going to keep their your public participation policy. So next, that brings you to TSBA's recommended policy 1.405. And then our current policy is at BO2. And this deals with rules of order. TSBA is recommending that you adopt the current edition of Robert's Rules of Order. And the board has chosen to develop their own simplified rules of order to utilize during board meetings that is very similar to the rules that are used by the City Council, the Planning Commission, and the Board of Zoning and Appeals. If you've done any work with Robert's Rules of Orders, it can get very, very complicated. For a body this size, typically this more simplified version that y'all have been operating under has been sufficient. However, I did not try to make any changes to see what the will of the board was.
Ms. Renier?
Do we have to have a motion before we have discussion?
No, we don't, according to this policy.
Okay, I have a question then. Well, I guess I'm looking at lines 5 and 6
On which policy?
on the TSBA recommended rules of order, and the page number at the bottom is 27. Lines 5 and 6, when a formal vote is taken on any question brought before the board, the decision shall be made on the basis of a majority of the membership of the board. So that would be 4 persons. What if it's what if 3 people are gone? You have enough for a quorum to make a vote, but then that would change this, right?
No, under state law, school boards must pass items based on a majority of the entire membership, not the membership present, but the entire membership.
Okay, so in that case, all 4 of those members, just as we did the other night, when
Right.
there were 5 of us, would have to, okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Any other questions? All right, now, do we have a motion from anyone to adopt one of these policies, and please state which policy?
Ms. Baker, what is your recommendation?
I recommend, the board's been utilizing this more simplified format that's found in our current policy. I would recommend adopting that version, but I will defer to the will of the board.
Okay, I move that we accept our own BO2 as policy number 1.405.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Renier. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. King seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Okay, the next policy you have before you is entitled Minutes, and it's numbered 1.406. The TSBA recommended version, I did like that and just made some minor changes to it based on our current policy, BO9. So they're really very similar. They're just setting out what state law requires us to maintain in our minutes.
Okay, Ms. Barrett,
I'll make a motion, we approve the staff recommendation.
motion is made to approve the staff recommended version.
I second that motion.
Second by Ms. Smith. Thank you. Now, questions or comments? Dr. Brown?
I don't see in the staff, and I'm probably missing it, where it says the minutes have to be signed by the board chair and the director of schools. Yes, I found it. Okay, it's there.
Where is it?
Sorry.
Line
It's
3
in
and
line
4.
4.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
It's there.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the staff, I'm sorry, yes. The current version, is that right?
No, the staff recommended
Staff
version.
recommended version. Okay. All right. Now, Ms. Smith?
With the changes made that we had wanted before, like Director of Schools, the title.
Yes, and that's part of what I did to the staff recommended version that you have on page 32.
Yeah.
I think you missed one.
Did I? Okay.
Where?
Line 4.
Okay, I see it. Sorry.
Line 4.
Yes,
Got it.
Okay.
thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? The motion is made to accept the staff recommended policy version of BO9 or 1.406 regarding minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Ms. Baker?
Okay, and I believe the last policy for tonight is, staff recommended version is Board Policy 1.407 regarding school board records. We did not have a version of this in our policies, so I do recommend that we adopt what TSBA has sent us. I took TSBA's and made some minor changes based on our style and the fact that we're a city school system. So you'll see there in line 19, we have to follow the rules regarding record retention that have been set out by the Municipal Technical Advisory Service as opposed to the County Public Records Commission. So I did make that revision because we are a city school system.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I felt like we did have a policy involving this.
We
Anything about the
have a
printing?
policy that has our schedule of fees
Okay.
for people asking for public records. But discusses also our records retention issues, which we did not have a policy that covered that. We just relied on state law.
So this is not the same thing.
It kind of covers both topics, but the schedule of fees is in more detail. And when we reach that policy for review, I was going to recommend that the schedule of fees actually become an administrative directive. And you'll notice in the references, it is set out as one of the references in there at number 12, the legal references, is the reasonable charges a records custodian may charge. We adopted what the Tennessee Comptroller's Office had recommended. That's our schedule of fees. And so I'll recommend that it's an attachment to this policy and could be actually listed in an administrative directive as opposed to through a board policy.
If you think we're covered.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
We need a motion.
So moved.
And that is to,
Adopt the staff recommended version of the school board records.
okay. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any other discussion, Mr. Barrett?
So line 18 on that one, you're going to change that? Mine still says county. You said you were going to change that, right?
You have one that says county?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll fix that.
Okay. And then the Public Records Commission, is that something, is that a state agency?
No, you may be looking,
Is that the older one?
yeah, are you looking at page 35?
37.
Look
I
at
didn't
page
have
35.
Let me see, but maybe I didn't have
Is
30.
it?
Do you have 35?
I'll find it.
That's on the staff recommended
Page
version.
35. All right. It'll be corrected. Page 19.
Yeah, I got it, yeah.
Line 1935.
But so the Public Records Commission is still like, that's a state thing, or?
No, the County Public Records Commission, there's one for the county. Cities are to follow the municipal technical advisory that's set up through the University of Tennessee.
So, okay, so lines 21 and 22, that's going to get changed, that Public Records Commission?
Yes, I'll have to
Okay.
change that.
All right.
Any other questions? All right, all those in favor of the motion to accept the staff recommended version of policy 1.407, say aye. Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much. And again, let me remind you that this is on first reading for these policies. So if you may want to take some time and go over them a little bit more, we can always make changes on the second reading.
And if there's anyone to pull off of consent agenda for the second reading, just let Ms. Price know so we can arrange that for the next agenda.
Dr. Gilbert?
Yes, sir. I'm here to give a report about the budget primarily to the public. So under reports and information, you will find the word budget. That would be what I'm about to do. Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Go right
thank
ahead.
you. As you all know, and certainly the public needs to know, this board plied through line by line our budget this year. And I think that we have a good budget. I think it's a budget that can look to the future. But I do appreciate the board's work on this. It was arduous work. So thank you very much, board, for your work on this. And I do want to review that for the public. The minutes of those meetings, of course, are going to be on the website if they're not already. So if the public wants additional details, they're certainly welcome to look at those minutes or also to call us for information. But this is the 16-17 budget that we will be submitting to council for approval. And we're really working on building capacity. The vision of this school district is to create a culture of collaborative learning, focusing on the whole child, assuring success in the global community. And as a result of that, there are two basic cornerstone beliefs on which this budget is built. The strength of a school district depends on the talent of its people and their ability to anticipate change and prepare for it. I would say if there's been any year in the history of education in which that is the case, it has been this year. Therefore, this budget should respond to the demographics and need of our children, our staff, and our community, and also build a capacity for excellence in people, programs, and facilities by anticipating and preparing for the future. So that is indeed, when you look at this budget, you have three primary areas in which we have addressed the needs of the people, of the programs, and also the facilities. As the public certainly knows, we have experienced growth. The county has experienced growth over the past several years. That growth continues. And so from the 14-15 year to the current time, we have experienced a growth of 382 students. I'm sure that has changed within the last week. The current student number at the time that this PowerPoint was developed was 8,445. We are projecting next year that we will have 8,720 students, so that is the number on which this budget is built. We have our schools are among the most diverse in Tennessee when you look at the ethnicities and also when you look at the languages. So we have 25 languages that are spoken in Murfreesboro City Schools, which is a pre-K 6 district, so that's pretty amazing. As far as what our emphasis will be in the budget, to expand the writing, we started this last year. We know that writing is extremely important in all content areas. To also look at our Tier 1 reading, which is your basic instruction of reading, and to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all students. To look at our gifted population and to expand our services there, and also more technology integration. We also will be looking at math intervention. We have already started work on what the professional development for that will look like next year. Benchmark assessments, these are assessments that are required by the state, but also that we need for making sure that our students are learning. Expanding our hiring and mentoring. So we know that we are in a competitive area. We have a lot of fast-growing school districts that are surrounding us, so the competition for quality people is increasing, and also the need when we bring those folks on board to make sure they are mentored, to make sure that they can be the best they can be, and that we can keep them for a long time. Also, we're interested in maintaining our facilities. I think that the city schools, through the help of the city council, has done an excellent job with that, but that continues to be important. We are beginning the process of changing carpet to tile. In many of our buildings, we have carpet still remaining, and so this year we will really start looking at the process of changing that to tile. It's very much needed. And then finally, taking a look at growth. So in this budget, you will see Hobgood, Black Fox, and also buses addressed. As far as excellent people, we will be adding 9 regular education positions and an ESL teacher. We will be adding 4 regular ed and 2 special ed assistants. So these are educational assistants, 1 counselor, a half of a phys ed teacher, which should be interesting, and a music teacher. We are adding 6 academic coaches. These are coaches that will be assigned then 1 per school. We will have 2 special education staff support personnel. These will be people that work in the schools across the district. Adding 1 gifted coordinator who will work with the gifted, but also when we look at the population that is not in Tier 1 and Tier 2, the majority of our students will fall there, so these people will also be responsible for what we call higher order thinking, and also making sure that that students are thinking in a complex manner so that they can problem solve. We will be adding a math coordinator that will be paid with title funds. 1 maintenance person, and then 2 bus teams, because we will be needing to add 2 buses. So this would be a driver and also an aide. As far as looking when we think about excellent people and developing people, our teacher mentor program, we will be beefing that up. That is something that not only the board asked about, but also our schools have asked about. New teacher orientation, we will be having 3 days of that this year, which is different. We will have 2 days of optional professional development that will occur right before the teachers report, and these will be optional. The teachers can come to those and earn their in-service points. They will be done by teachers. We will shift 3 of our federal IDEA positions, these are our special ed positions, to local GP budget. We're having to do that because we have not seen an increase in our federal funding as far as our IDEA, but obviously the salaries of our people have gone up and the requirements of the position because we are constantly increasing our numbers of students. So that is the reason that shift needed to happen. Employee recruitment, we began expanding that this year. We feel a need for that. Again, we're in a competitive area and a competitive profession. Increasing our substitute pay by $5 for each level of substitute, and also increasing our assistant principal salaries. And then we saw a salary bump from the state. The amount was not prescribed, but we will be giving a 3% or asking for a 3% across the board raise. Programming, we mentioned the writing program already. We are developing a teacher cohort, so we're developing a group of teachers that really are specialists in writing. You'll see that expand this year, and that will be helping all teachers learn because of our professional learning communities and the collaboration we have within our teacher cohort. Mastery Connect benchmark assessment. As I've said, we have to have a benchmark assessment. We had been using something called NWEA. We really feel that Mastery Connect will be much better. Some of our teachers and all of our principals have looked at this, so we will look at purchasing that. The Tier 1 early reading focus, explicit teaching of foundations. We do not want to move toward a whole language approach. We have found that phonics are extremely important for our early grades, particularly when you get up to about the middle of second grade, your K, your 1, and then part of your second grade. If our students do not have those foundations, then what we have found is that they do not develop those foundations later on. Expanding our STEAM, we also call this content integration. Some people will call it project-based learning, but what that is really looking at the different standards across the content areas, seeing where they connect. What that does for our students is it really makes a more complex manner of learning, but also our students have something to build on. So if we can connect things together, all human beings find that much easier to understand, and so we'll be looking at that. We've already begun that. Board Maker for Counselors, which is a program that our counselors will use, and if you have questions about that, I'm going to ask, I can sort of explain it. But it is a program for counselors that has to do with providing manipulatives, picture schedules. Thank you. Thank you very much. New testing for our gifted. We want to make sure that our gifted population, that we're really looking at truly gifted and not just life experience. And the Easy 504 software program, 504 has to do with allergies. It may have to do with if you have a broken leg. So what accommodations do we need to make sure that children have? And we have to have that documented just like we would our IEPs, and so that program will allow us to do that. As far as our facilities, we're already looking at this. The board has had much discussion about this, but we will be having our Bradley renovation where we will be adding restrooms. That will be online this summer. Our Hobgood addition will also come online in the fall. Actually, we hope to have that finished early summer, but 10 classrooms, gym and a stage, a music room. That if you drive by Hobgood, you can see that. It looks great. Black Fox addition, we will be planning for that. That will come online in fall of 2017. And then the site selection, purchase, and school design for the Southwest School that we will need to have in place by fall of 2018. And then we are totally out of room at our bus garage. So we are looking for a site for a bus garage. But that is what we're looking at as far as capital improvement, big capital improvements, buildings, facilities. We have divided the capital projects budget into two. One would come out of our general purpose budget. The other is what we're asking the city to fund. These are the things that would come out of our GP budget. Roof thermal scans, this has to do with a way to check and make sure that our roofs are okay, that we're not seeing a need of a fix of a roof, and so the thermal scans provide that. That allows us to fix a roof before it actually starts to cause a lot of trouble. We're looking at 2 utility vans, a trailer, and a single-man lift. The single-man lift, you'll remember in the budget discussion, we talked about that we had to rent that, and really we would have spent almost, if not more money, renting it than we would purchasing it. The ARC flash kits are needed for our maintenance folks. Custodial service equipment, playground mulch, Zonar upgrade for Edulog. This has to do with our buses and tracking our buses. The computer virus and malware protection for our computers. Printers for classroom growth, so those teachers that we talked about earlier will be hiring. We will need, in our classrooms that we're building, we will need to provide printers for them, also repair parts for our computers, and then network management server expansion. So those come under the GP budget, as well as updating the VoIP system at Hobgood and Bradley, security cameras for our new locations, Cason Lane's front doors, Irma Siegel's courtyard doors, the Hobgood gym doors and band, John Pittard attaching the intercom to the cafeteria. Overall Creek, we still have classes that are growing there, new classrooms that will be occupied this year that were not occupied when the building was built, and so the Cuomo boards for there. Mitchell Nelson Elementary, the library rear door, Mitchell Nelson Primary, replacing the tile, and you'll see that in the city budget we asked for the carpet to be replaced in the kindergarten classrooms. This would be the casework that would be involved in those classrooms. And then Reese Rogers, we have a sidewalk that is needed between the wings, so the outside doors when the students come out, we need a sidewalk there, and then exterior lighting also at Reese Rogers. As far as what we're asking from the city, as far as capital outlay, we're asking for furniture for the new Black Fox classrooms. You remember we'll be adding 10 classrooms there that will come online the next year. The expansion equipment that we would need for those classrooms, so the cabling, the wireless, and so on. Hobgood, right now, we're looking at opening that this fall. So the addition classroom furniture that we would need for that. Tile in the Mitchell Nelson Kindergarten, I've already mentioned. Northfield needs painting throughout. We do need 2 additional buses, and we will have growth. We've already mentioned that of our students, so we will be needing new student and teacher laptops for those growth positions. And then finally, we'll be needing the cabinets for putting those laptops in. So when you look at this budget and the things that are asked for in it, what we know is, and we've already mentioned change, but really leadership and educational leadership, a school district's leadership, rests on the ability to maneuver the changing landscape of politics, academic expectations, and demographics. And we really believe that this budget, by building the capacity of our people, our programs, and our facilities, will help us not only maneuver that landscape, but also to conquer it. So again, I want to thank the board for their work on the budget, and would be happy to answer any questions or any explanations that you think that the public would need.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. Any questions or comments that you would like to make pertaining to the budget? Okay. Other items on the agenda? Is that it? I did attend, and I want to report back to you, because we said we were going to. I attended the TSBA session on advocacy Monday, and I'm handing you out a thing that was in the book that you can look at. It's what would your community say about your school board? It kind of got some pretty good questions and comments and things that you might like to look at. Dr. Gilbert wants one, I can see. We talked about a lot of things pertaining to advocating for our students and our school system. I can honestly tell you that if I had to rate, and I'm prejudiced, I know that, but if I had to rate our board with any of those boards that were represented on Monday at TSBA, I believe, well, I don't believe, I know that our board would be at the very top, because it is much of a board that works very well together. We also mentioned our working with the county school board, Mr. Blair, working with our city council. We have a representative here at all of our meetings, Mr. Washington, and we're very thankful for that. But it was a good meeting, but it talked about advocating for our schools, and I walked out of there and very proud to be serving on this board and with those of you that are on this board. So thank you for a job well done, and we did go through the budget well, and I think we have a good budget. Yeah.
Mr. Campbell, I want to note that the other night at the MEA banquet, there was deep appreciation shown to this board for the advocacy you have had for the district and for children and for teachers and for the entire staff. So thank you very much for that.
Mr. Luke he mentioned what we have done in regard to promoting, and particularly through all the testing stuff and everything else that has happened within the school system throughout the year. All right, any other comments, questions from this board? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. A second?
Second.
All in favor? Good night.